Our natural state of being is to feel high all of the time. Now, what happens is if we are using certain substances, and especially if we are overusing them, then what happens is we are tuning ourselves to a lower octave of where we're naturally supposed to feel, and we become used to that. And then we think we're feeling high, when in actuality, we're feeling only a fraction of what's possible, but we in a way get stuck in that level because it has become familiar. So in this video, I want to show you the true vibration of cannabis. I want to show you how many times it can keep us trapped in a certain level and show you my story around this, how I used to do this all day, every day back in 2012, why I stopped doing it, and how when I stopped doing it, my whole entire life changed and my natural vibration went up to where I felt high all of the time using nothing. I believe that's possible for you, and in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Welcome back to another video. My name's Aaron, and I help people expand their consciousness. Now, in this video, what I want to do is share with you how I went from somebody that was smoking cannabis every single day, no joke. I would go to work. I was working at Nordstrom selling women's shoes, and what I would do is I'd go home, and at the end of the day, like 5 or 6 o'clock when I got off, immediately I would start smoking. I was pretty into it. When I say pretty into it, every paycheck, every 2 weeks, I'd go buy something to do with cannabis. What I mean is I'd buy bongs, I'd buy glass, I'd buy different ways of using it, and I would use it every single day. And I was really passionate about it. I actually have a lot of good memories with friends, and we'd play basketball, and it was like friends would come over, and it was something that was like very enjoyable to do. However, what eventually happened is I realized that I was using it in a way as a crutch. I was using it to heal a lot of the childhood pain I think I went through. I think it was a way of numbing me out of the pain I was feeling in my life because I wasn't necessarily happy with where I was. And there was a lot of dependency, I think. It's an interesting thing. I think a lot of times when people become dependent on different substances, there may be a codependency that they have towards some childhood trauma they experience, where then they become almost obsessive about something else. Like anybody... if you're listening to this, do you feel like maybe you have what they call an addictive personality, where anything you do very intensely? I know that's even me now. Like, I meditate very intensely. What I mean by that is I like meditate 2 times a day, and I'm very passionate about it. When I make videos, I make them very intense in my videos. You know, anything I do all out. That included smoking cannabis. And originally the reason I did that too was because I was experiencing the side effects of ADHD or Adderall. I was taking Adderall, which is the prescription drug they give to people that have ADHD. And the side effects of that are you don't eat very good, you don't sleep very good. So during the day I would take Adderall, I would sell a whole bunch of shoes because it was a commission-based job. I'd go home at the end of the day, and it would be very hard for me to sleep and eat. Well, what are the side effects of cannabis? It's easy to sleep, it's easy to eat. So I would do that every day, but eventually I felt very dependent. I felt very dependent because 1, I needed Adderall for ADHD, and on 2, I needed cannabis at the end of the night. So I was like, man, I feel like I need these things, and it was just not that great of a feeling. And I also felt like a lot of resistance because of my childhood trauma, pain of having an abusive ex-stepmom in my life, and I realized that a lot of what I was doing, I actually got the feeling and like the insight that it was time to quit, probably for like 6 months to a year, but I just didn't want to jump into that. It was almost like I felt so much of a comfortability with cannabis, and when I did it, there was a certainty that I would feel a certain way. So I enjoyed it, but also it was a way of me taking away the pain and numbing, and there was a level of certainty with it, really. And what happened is eventually I got to a point to where I just felt so much resistance of needing these things that I started doing a little research, and I came across the power of meditation. I read about it online, and I started meditating because I found that meditation is one way of increasing focus. It's one way of then I wouldn't need Adderall. If I didn't need Adderall, maybe then I wouldn't need the cannabis as much. So what I eventually did is I started meditating. I started observing my thoughts for 5 or 10 minutes a day. And over the course of 2 or 3 days, my life really started to change. And it sounds like such a small thing, but I started to feel differently. And eventually what happened is I sat down to meditate one day, and I just had this feeling that my life was going to change forever from meditating every single day. And from that point going forward, it did. And within 2 weeks, got off of Adderall completely. I realized at the same time that my beliefs were creating my reality. So in a way, I could see how, because I believed I had ADHD, and I also was like carrying the pain of my past, I could tell that the way I felt about it, the way I thought about it, was affecting me in the present moment. So what I did is I started to reframe having ADHD. I started to say, no, I just have a lot of energy. I need to ground myself. So I'd go out in grass and I would ground myself. And another thing I would do is I would meditate. And that was my way of mitigating that. And I dropped the belief that I had ADHD. That was another thing. I'm not suggesting everybody do this or not giving doctor advice, but that's just what I did and it worked for me. But also at the same time, I then started weaning back or like stopped smoking cannabis. And it was also because I started to literally feel high all of the time. I believe that our natural state of being is for us to feel high all the time. If I were to feel the way that I feel now, back in 2012, even when I was smoking weed, I would think I was high. And all I did was I learned meditation. I brought the awareness into my body. And as I did that, as I started to also heal the pain of my past, I started to forgive my ex-stepmom. I started to forgive people in my past. And I stopped being so angry because I started realizing they were doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they were at. It was like that energy began to free up for me, and I started to feel completely different. And funny enough, I always had patterns in my life from my ex-stepmom. Even after she left my life when I was 15 and my dad divorced her, I had an ex-girlfriend that was very controlling, just like my ex-stepmom. Then I had a manager that was very controlling, just like my ex-stepmom. And what happened is, when I did this healing practice and I started healing my painful past, the ex-stepmom pattern of my manager, who we tried getting fired for literally years but couldn't because she was protected by upper management, she got fired. Within 2 weeks of me doing this, so it's almost like as I did the inner healing, my outer reality began to change. So this was when things really started to change for me. But the vibration of cannabis or marijuana is that I believe cannabis is, in a way, in this reality, it's in a way a gift. I think that this is a very healing plant. This is something that can heal many people and has a lot of benefits. It has a lot of healing benefits. And it's like, people that go through cancer, people that have different, ailments or anxiety. I think it could be very beneficial. But at the same time, I think that in a way, it's like we become in relationship with this plant. And I remember when I broke up with cannabis, literally, I broke up with cannabis. What happened is I made the choice to quit. And what happened is I knew it was almost time for me to quit. Then what I did is I went to a friend's smoke shop. I have friends that have like the best smoke shop in Vegas. And I went there and I bought this big bong that was like $300. And I brought it home and I knew I should have quit. But what I did is I loaded it up for the first hit I ever took out of it. And I took this big hit. And as I breathed in, I could feel it. And then as I breathed out, I started crying. And I immediately knew that that was the last hit of cannabis I was going to take for a very long time. And when I was doing that, I was crying. Here's an interesting thing. I felt the emotion of how I made everybody else feel in my life when I was smoking cannabis. Now, maybe this was a self-guilt thing, I don't know, but I used to go to my dad's house and I'd be high around my dad and my sisters, and I always felt kind of guilty about that. I actually had an ex-girlfriend that I used to smoke and hide smoking from because I didn't understand how she would drink a couple times a week, but why couldn't I smoke a couple times a week? So I would hide it and smoke. And there's probably another control factor there too with the whole ex-stepmom thing. But also what happened is I felt that what I made her feel or what she felt in that moment. It's almost like I was having a life review around cannabis and I was crying. It was this very emotional thing. And for like 2 weeks after that, I felt kind of empty. When you break up with somebody, you might feel a little bit empty because now you have all this space inside of yourself. When I broke up with cannabis, I felt empty for about 2 weeks. And it felt different because I was so used to being high most of the time when I wasn't working. For me, I worked a sales job, so I know some people that can smoke and go to work, but I couldn't do that. But after, I would look forward to so much at the end of the day, me smoking cannabis. Now, cannabis, I think, is a very powerful teacher and healing like spirit in this reality in a way. However, at the same time, there is a shadow to it. That shadow is that then people become codependent on her. People become attached to her. And then it's hard for them to break up with her. It's hard for them to detach from her because they get such a level of certainty. It's almost like you're in a relationship that you know you've outgrown, but you feel so comfortable in it because you're so used to it. When you pick that up and you smoke it, you get this sense of certainty of this emotion. And maybe even though there may be some inner turmoil or inner pain from the past, it kind of goes away for a little bit. Now there's like I've talked about it before, but if you were to calibrate the level of the vibration of marijuana or cannabis, it would calibrate at a level on a scale of 1 to 10. I think it would calibrate at about a 5. And what happens is if you're feeling a 3 or a 2 or the pain of your past, you feeling a 5 is high. But what eventually happens is you will outgrow it, but you will keep going back down to it. So it's like you could be much higher. You could be at a 7 or 8 out of 10, but you're bringing yourself back down to the 5 because you're valuing certainty. You're valuing that girlfriend being there or that relationship being there, but you've outgrown it. It's like Alan Watts says, when you get the message, what is it? When you get the message, hang up the phone. That's what it is. So imagine we just keep picking up the phone, we just keep listening, we just keep talking, but we already got the message and we're just kind of staying online, wasting our time. I also think that with cannabis, there's an energy depletion that happens. Have you ever seen somebody that's extremely passionate and smokes cannabis or weed? It, I'm sure, exists, but a lot of times when I would smoke cannabis, I would be around friends and it'd be like, so what do you want to do? I don't know, man. Let's just like do this or do that. It's like, there's almost like a loss of intensity in the voice. There's a loss of passion in the voice. It's just become so okay with being, it's like everything's okay. And you know, that can be a very powerful lesson and tool. But it can also, if you're doing it too much, it can be something that's holding you back from really accomplishing something great in your life. I think that to create your dream life or to create something magical in your life, for me at least, it's required quite a bit of energy and focus. You know, I made videos every single day on YouTube before, for like months before things really picked off back in 2017. And it required a lot of focus, and it also required a lot of like me detaching from the friend group that I had that was smoking a lot of cannabis. Because it's addictive almost to be around people doing it. You then have like, well, why not do it? And it was kind of sad because then I'm also letting go of like the people associated with it. But I promise you, if you want to, you know, take your life to the next level or really make a vision come true, it requires energy, and you will have more energy when you are meditating and raising your vibration naturally than you will if you're smoking cannabis to relieve the tension. Maybe you're smoking cannabis because you work a job you hate and it kind of relieves the pressure at the end of the day. Well, if you start doing what you love, you'll start to have self-manufactured energy where you don't need it. So this is like, you know, I made that choice, and I think cannabis is a very positive, good thing, but it also has a shadow. And for many people, it's depleting their energy, they're overusing it, they're abusing it, and they've already got the message, but they haven't hung up the phone. And the thing I want to encourage you to know is that it is worth it to let go of something and to really wire in a new vibration. Meditate every single day. Ground yourself in grass. There's other things you can do that make it an easy transition, but realize that, you know, if you're listening to this far in the video, back in 2012, if I would have heard this before I quit smoking cannabis, I wouldn't have even listened to this far into a video because I wouldn't have been ready. I didn't want to hear anything that like negated the positives of smoking cannabis. But eventually, I started hearing it more and more. And my guess is that if you've watched this far into the video, then maybe it's time that you let go of smoking cannabis, or that you at least weaned back on it and you started going after your purpose. You started meditating. You realized that your natural state of being is to feel high all the time, to much higher than you can feel smoking cannabis. If you were to do the shadow work, if you were to heal, if you were to go into your feelings, cannabis can sometimes make us numb and not feel our feelings. But the key to healing is feeling. So feel it. Allow yourself to relieve that pressure. Allow yourself to really wire in a new reality and to use the energy that you were given, that you naturally have, to grow a vision. And to realize that as you do that, everything will change. But there may be an initial week or two where it feels a little bit empty, but I promise you, if you stick with it, it will be worth it. It will be worth it for you to let go of something that's depleting your energy, that you may be overusing and abusing, and understanding it's still a divine thing. Maybe it's something you can do occasionally, but be really honest with yourself and aware of how it is affecting your vibration. Because I do believe that cannabis, for many people, may make them feel high, but if you were to do the inner work and you were to meditate, you would feel even higher. And when you then smoked, it would bring you down. I remember months after I quit smoking, I then tried it again with friends. And guess what happened? I felt way less high than normal. I remember when I went through my spiritual awakening, I was walking around my room thinking and hoping, I hope this feeling doesn't go away. I felt high all the time. And I felt like on a scale of 1 to 10, I felt like at a 7 or 8 out of 10. And I was like, I hope I don't drop back down to a 3 or 4 and need to smoke to get back up to a 5. And what really happened is that became my natural set point. Yes, it fluctuates. I have more frustrating days than others, but I bounce back. And I believe your natural state of being is to be an 8 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. And as you start to do the inner work, that will naturally start to happen, and you will naturally start to feel high. I also have a meditation for raising your dominant vibrations that you can feel a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's one of my most powerful meditations. Listen to it for 21 days. Watch what happens. It's in the top of the description box below, or it's at an end card right here. Other than that, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video with somebody if you feel like it can help someone make the choice to quit smoking cannabis, and knowing that it may be the best thing for you or for them, and understanding that you're naturally meant to feel high all of the time. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, peace, much love, and namaste.